I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even blink when Darrell walked onto the stage with the presentation I had spent nights writing. While he thanked the management, I sat in the front row and squeezed my thighs to keep from laughing. Not because it was funny, but because if I didn't laugh, something much worse would have come out. Render Forest celebrated record sales growth, 20%, in the midst of a recession. And I knew every number in that report because they were all mine. The strategy Darrell was raving about was written by me. He was on sick leave when I was doing field research, optimizing funnels, and testing proposals. The idea of gamification was mine. The new sales script was mine. But he was standing on stage, and they were applauding him. I am 39 years old. I have worked at this company for 8 years. I kept quiet when I reworked someone else's flawed plans. I smiled when the men in the room interrupted me at weekly meetings. And now, when I finally had something to say, I was asked again to not make a big deal out of it. "It's just business, Shelley," said the director as I left his office. "Yes, it's business, and I'm a business analyst. I work with systems. That means I can count. And I remember. I remember everything. I was betrayed. Publicly, beautifully, without words. And perhaps the worst part was not that. The worst part was that they thought I would just swallow it. That a woman who had kept half of their contracts afloat for years would just walk away, fighting for her job. They underestimated the most terrifying thing about me, my silent memory. I quit without a thank you letter, without a farewell toast. I left only a black flash drive on the table, no name, no label, no, not with files. It was empty, just a gesture, like a sealed envelope with a poisoned letter that no one will open, but everyone is afraid to. My last days at Render Forest were almost sterile. I walked around like a shadow. No one spoke directly to me. Just one. "It's a shame you're leaving, but Darrell." But Darrell what? When I entered the room, he fell silent, as if he was afraid of his own voice. Because somewhere deep down he knew. He hadn't just stolen ideas. He had stolen my trust in him. And that was much worse. On the day of my last official work meeting, the director said, "I hope you're not burning any bridges, Shelley." I replied, "No, I'm just blowing up the ones that were built dishonestly." Exactly 1 week after I was fired, I received an offer I couldn't ignore. A new startup working in behavioral analytics for retail was looking for someone who could build a department from scratch. The founder, Joanne, saw the true authorship of my strategic breakthrough back then. She knew who had created that 20% growth. We met at a rooftop cafe. She put a tablet in front of me. "This is a prototype. We're thinking of calling it Remind. It's a system that reads customer behavior on an intuitive level." I was silent. For the first time in months, I didn't feel the need to defend or convince anyone. I just nodded. "If you agree, you'll have complete autonomy." "And whose strategy will it be?" I asked. She smiled. "Only yours, Shelley, and we'll make sure no one takes it away from you." I signed the contract the next morning, and Render Forest had no idea what I was cooking up. The first day at a new job doesn't start with flowers. It starts with silence, in which you decide, this time I won't give them a chance. Remind didn't have offices, a $12,000 coffee machine, or a corporate mantra on the wall. Just an empty room, charts on the walls, a team of 5 people, and one sentence from Joanne. "We have 120 days to prove we're not crazy." I had everything I never had at Render Forest: influence without protocols, trust without weekly checks, complete strategic autonomy. But I didn't come here for a warm welcome. I came to build a system that would burn away everything fake in the retail market. I worked 14 hours a day, silently, analytically. I studied customer behavior like a nervous system, from micro-expressions to small gestures. I saw how a purchasing decision was formed before the customer even reached the shelf. We created Remind not just as a tool, we created a prediction that was more accurate than any focus group report. At the same time, I was watching. Not every day, but with cold regularity. I watched Darrell, Render Forest, and their every move, and what I saw made me clench my jaw. They couldn't keep up the pace. The strategy that worked at launch began to crumble because no one knew how to adapt it. Darrell talked at conferences about behavioral spikes that sounded like something from TikTok, but had no action behind them. Gaps appeared in the reports. Revenue began to fall. And I knew. Just a little more. A few more right moves. I wasn't waiting for RenderForest to fall on its own. I was waiting for the moment when we became a threat they couldn't ignore. So I told Joanne, "I'm ready to expand. We're going public." "Do you think they'll pay attention?" she asked. I smiled. "I don't want their attention. I want them to panic." And so began my most interesting experiment, a strategic invasion. No war, no shouting, but with surgical precision. RenderForest's biggest mistake was that they forced me to remain silent. Because silence is the perfect environment for building something deadly. Remind was getting ready to launch. We didn't rent exhibition halls. We didn't spend millions on video presentations with drones. We did what big companies had long forgotten. We showed how it really works. Our first case study was in a small retail store in Austin. Cameras with neural networks tracked customers' micro-gestures. Algorithms changed the layout of the store in real time. And in the first week, sales increased by 37%. No advertising, no discounts, just smart behavioral analytics. 2 weeks later, another case study, this time in Chicago, then in Seattle. The Remind platform started appearing in blogs. Marketers started talking about it, then Forbes, then CNBC, and still no direct mention of RenderForest. I didn't go for direct attacks. That was beneath me. But they knew. They knew. A month after launch, I received an email from a friend in RenderForest's HR department. Darrell looks like someone who expects the apocalypse every day. He walks around with a Remind tablet and says, "It's all just hype." I didn't even need to respond. But you know what was the best part? For the first time in my life, I didn't feel angry. There was no resentment. Just a clear, cold understanding that they weren't my competition. They were my past. And I was their future. At a public demo, we unveiled a feature I had kept secret even from my own team. "This isn't just analytics," I said. "It's real-time behavioral adaptation. Your store learns faster than your competitors think." The room fell silent. Cameras flashed. After my speech, an investor from a South Korean fund approached us. "I hear you used to work at RenderForest?" I smiled. "No, I helped them survive. Now I'm creating something that will replace them." And at that moment, I realized I was no longer in the shadows. I had become a burning light. The moment your enemy starts copying your ideas is not a victory. It's the beginning of their end. Because they don't copy the truth. They copy the result. And that means they're always late. In the middle of the second quarter, RenderForest released Insight Motion. The name was brilliant. The presentation was professional. The technical documentation was incredibly familiar. I sat in a dark office, flipping through the presentation slides while green tea brewed in the background. My gaze stopped on the Adaptive View A/B layering algorithm, a phrase I used in one of the first internal drafts of Remind. Drafts that never left RenderForest. Someone had leaked my old documents. Someone had decided that my ideas were worth bringing back, now as Darrell Ortiz Innovations. I didn't scream. I opened Google Meet. "Joanne, we're putting out a short answer." "Now?" "Right now, and make it live, no editing. We'll show them that our technology is way ahead of them." What if they use this as the basis for a new version? They're already playing chess with the past. We're building the future. 2 days later, I was standing on a minimalist stage without logos or slogans. Remind is not an alternative. It's a consequence. A consequence of what happens when a woman isn't interrupted at rallies, when her notes aren't accidentally lost, and when her voice is finally heard loud and clear. The video got 4.7 million views in 3 days. That same week, I got 2 calls. The first was from a private number. I knew who it was. I didn't answer. The second was an official request to buy Remind for $48 million from RenderForest. I didn't answer right away. I turned on my camera, and I started writing a speech. Why is it sometimes better to lose everything, to build something that cannot be bought? You know you're feared when people start sending you flowers instead of summonses. On Monday, I received a large bouquet of white calla lilies. No card, no signature. On Tuesday, an email from CEO_assistant at renderforesting.com. It said, "We would appreciate it if you would reconsider our offer. Your silence is also valuable." They didn't want Remind. They wanted my story to remain untold. I responded, but not to them, to Fast Company magazine, which was planning an article on the transformation of female leadership in the tech industry. I don't do business with people who have appropriated my name. And that phrase became the headline of the issue. Darrell was silent, but his silence felt like a whistle. I knew he was up to something, and I had to stay ahead of him. That same week, I received a message from Martha, a former RenderForest project manager who had followed me. "Shelley, remember those drafts that disappeared from your desktop? They were stored in the corporate cloud. I can confirm this officially." My throat went dry. Stealing ideas is one thing, but using documents without permission is something else entirely. This is legal evidence. I handed everything over to my lawyer. No revenge, no emotions. I just said, if RenderForest uses anything from my intellectual property again, I won't just respond. I'll do it at a conference broadcast to 12 countries. And of course, Darrell couldn't take it. At a conference in San Francisco, he took the stage with a presentation on ethical leadership in high technology. Sometimes you have to make unpopular decisions, for the sake of the team. I could barely contain myself in the hall, trying not to laugh, because I was the next speaker. I went up. "I don't know what unpopular decisions you're talking about, but when your name is removed from presentations and your ideas are patented without you, that's not leadership, that's theft in a suit." The applause wasn't loud. It was long, and Darrell didn't wait for me to finish. He just left. Explosions won't destroy you. The silence after them will. I thought the worst was over. But the real hunt doesn't start with growls. It starts with muted microphones. A week after the conference, Martha disappeared. Well, not literally. She just stopped responding. Her LinkedIn and Slack profiles were deleted, and our shared documents were frozen. I called her, but her phone was off. The next morning, I received an envelope. No return address. Inside was a screenshot of an email from her corporate account in which RenderForest offered her a confidential settlement in connection with a breach of the NDA. Blackmail. But with money. I didn't judge her. She had 2 children and a mortgage, but that screenshot was evidence. From this moment on, I told the team, we are not fighting. We are existing. And that is already a threat to the old world. I created a new department at Remind called the Silent Front. No names, no faces, just ideas. We checked the security of every channel. We rebuilt the server architecture. We trained everyone, from interns to the CTO, to say only what could be repeated in court. And RenderForest did respond, through one of our investors. We've been told that RenderForest is looking for grounds for a patent complaint. Their lawyers are working on evidence. Evidence? Of my work? I was ready. I filed for public registration of all Remind developments based on the same strategy RenderForest used to create Darrell's fake presentation. And I did it through a foundation that supports women inventors. When the foundation published a press release, I was invited to appear on CNN. I sat in the studio with a quiet smile. They tried to take me out the back door, but they forgot that I designed this house. They thought I was just a door, but I became a wall. And now they're knocking on emptiness. Sometimes war doesn't start with gunfire. It starts when you wake up and don't recognize the people you trusted yesterday. The morning after the CNN broadcast, a report was placed on my desk. One of our key partners, Tavern Data Group, had terminated our agreement. No explanation, just a formal statement. The second, Hexen Analytics, asked to suspend our joint project, and added privately, "Shelley, we have been warned that our association with you could harm our government tenders." RenderForest did not attack us directly. They attacked the air we breathe, our contracts, our trust, our reputation in the shadows, not in the press. I sat in the meeting room with my hands on the wooden table, as if the wood could absorb my anger. "They're not challenging us, they're sowing doubt," I said aloud. At that moment, an email arrived. From Martha. The subject line read simply, "You were right." Attached were scans of Darrell's correspondence with RenderForest lawyers, dated before my strategy was stolen. They had planned this, meticulously. And Darrell wasn't just a fraud, he was a tool. Martha ran away because she wasn't being blackmailed for money. Her brother worked at RenderForest, and they threatened him. She kept quiet so as not to put him in danger. But after my speech, something broke. I read the documents to the end. Then I printed out just one page, the one where Darrell admits that the RM project is based on her final structure, and I took it to the lawyers. "They want to play NDA?" I said. "Fine, then we'll play by their rules, but better." They didn't break me. They just made me speak their language. But I've always been a better translator. What I went through wasn't a victory. It was a rebirth, and rebirth is always painful. I looked at the lawyers in the courtroom, not with anger, with concentration. They came in with faces that said, "This doesn't concern us." But in their briefcase was a 78-page lawsuit signed by Remind. Darrell didn't show up. He was on sick leave. How convenient. But his quotes were there, printed out, words that became nails in the coffin of his career. We didn't demand money. We demanded the truth. While the trial was going on, a press conference was held. Not mine, but that of Render Forest investors. One of them, David Livingston, stated bluntly, "We are conducting an internal audit and reviewing our cooperation with the company's management in light of the new circumstances." It sounded like a death sentence, and all the journalists understood it. The market did too. Remind received 3 new requests for cooperation within 24 hours. One of them was from a former Render Forest client. But the main thing happened at night. Marta called me. Her voice was trembling. They're trying to twist everything. They're portraying you as a deliberate provocateur. They're saying you set Darrell up. I didn't answer, because I knew that meant we had won. And now they were trying to break the only thing they couldn't touch. My voice. The next day, I gave an interview. Not about Render Forest. About women who remain silent when their ideas are stolen. About those who are used to proving everything 3 times over. About myself. The one they tried to take out of the game through the hallway, but who walked out through the stage. My last sentence was simple. I don't want to win. I just won't let myself be erased anymore. They wanted to erase me from the record. Now my voice has become the record itself. They said, "That's too loud." I replied, "That's because you're used to women whispering when their ideas are stolen." The judge announced the decision without fanfare. Just a dry, claim granted. Render Forest was found guilty of unethical use of intellectual property. They had a choice, appeal or issue a formal public apology. They chose the latter, not because they were sorry, because they had everything to lose. A post on LinkedIn on behalf of the company appeared the next day. "We acknowledge that unacceptable violations of the authorship of the Remind strategy have been committed. We apologize to Shelley Ross." The comments below it destroyed them completely. Belated awareness is not a virtue. We are losing respect, not money. Remind remained independent. I rejected all offers to buy it, even from Amazon. I wanted to breathe freely, not trade control for comfort. Darrell? There were rumors that he had become a consultant, that he had opened a small agency, but his name never appeared at any conferences again. His face disappeared from banners, magazines, and news feeds. And me? I returned to the office on Saturday. No cameras, no team. I sat down at my desk. I opened an old file with drafts of that very strategy. I reread the lines I had written at night, which no one needed at the time. And for the first time, I didn't cry. I didn't dream of victory. I just wanted the world to hear who wrote it. Sometimes justice isn't a podium. It's just the silence inside you when you no longer have to prove that you have the right to be.